Wait for it, yeah. Wait for it, yeah. Wait for it, yeah. Wait for it, yeah.
Hey guys, it's Pamela from the SheHH Podcast team, and welcome back to SheHH, where we interview women in Christian music all over the world. Welcome to series 3 of the podcast. Today we'll be speaking to Filipino singer, songwriter, and producer Darla Baltazar. She talks about her musical journey, her EP Unapologetic, and her experience being a full-time artist and producer. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at SheHH and share this episode with a friend.
What's up, guys? You probably haven't seen me on here ever, but I'm Hannah, and I am the communications coordinator for SheHH, and I also help curate the playlist. So, super glad to be here, and just excited to get to talk with you, Darla. We've talked a little bit before, just over Instagram, and working on another project together, but this is the first time we'll get to speak one-on-one. So how you feeling?
Right.
It's like, what, 9 something over there?
Yes, it is. It is early in the morning. Just kind of starting my energy this morning, but I'm feeling pretty good, pretty chill and okay.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate you being willing to meet so early. I don't know what time you normally get up, but I definitely am not an early riser. So
Me neither. It's a reason to get up. this call.
How are things? How's life going for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, life's been pretty interesting lately. Mainly because I've got a new release just last Friday, and it's really interesting having that opportunity to release a single with a label. It's a new one, and it's just opened a lot of doors, and a lot of sketchy doors that I have to discern whether to open. It's just it's been pretty interesting, but I guess I'm just very happy mainly lately by how God has been blessing me with the gift of collaboration, I guess. It's amazing. It's amazing because I really started making this, doing this whole music journey kind of really independently, like in all sense of the word, So I would literally do everything, production, marketing it in the minimal way I do, and like all these things. But with this project, it's the first time that I've really got like a lot of people involved, and even a lot of good friends of mine involved, especially in the song itself. And I'm also seeing a lot of positive responses, I guess, even from my own parents who just genuinely enjoy the song. And it's just been blessing me a lot, although it's a huge relief. So I'm just in a season where I'm really relieved that there's a lot of good returns from that experience of making that song, because it was really a difficult one. It really was. It took quite a few months, and it involved a lot of discerning, and it was one of those projects where there was so much resistance from the enemy, I think, that we really had to really push through and like power through. Lately it's been more of like a kind of season, but at the same time I'm also kind of like preparing for the next one, because I know I can't rest for too long until I'm in heaven, basically. That's how I've been recently.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot of good things, right? But definitely can be really busy. And sure. I imagine, and you mentioned like definitely having to stay on top of discerning, okay, do I go in this direction? God, do I go in this direction? Who do I work with?
It's tiring to decide like every single day.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for sharing. So, in your Insta bio, you describe yourself as a singer, songwriter, producer, and you use the word encourager. And through just our interactions and through just the content that you have put out there, whether it's a resource, like that video that you made a while back about making music for the Lord, or whether it's just through really any of your songs, any of your music, I really get a sense of I feel like I get an authentic sense of who you are. And I definitely would use the word encourager to describe you, but why did you use that word to describe yourself?
Oh yeah, great question. It's interesting because you know how you make an Instagram bio like that and you think it's so simple, but you sit down for like maybe 3 hours actually thinking, what are just a few words to actually describe who I am? And I remember I spent a long time actually thinking, like, if I don't use a lot of words, like, how would I describe myself? And I ended up using the word encourager, especially after really reflecting that you just come to a season where you really need to ask God what your vision is, what your mission is in life, and what his actual calling for you is. Or else you run the risk of like just coasting through your life. And I really didn't want that. I really came to a season where like, okay, I understand that God, you are blessing me with like a lot of music and with just people being able to really hear it, and like a lot of people being able to hear it. So I didn't want to misuse that privilege and that blessing that God gave me. So I really asked him, like, what is it particularly you have in mind for me to do? And I do make music. Yes, I do. But it's a big part of my heart to really just bring forth a message. It's like more than anything, I want to encourage people. I really want to guide people and convict people as well. Like I have this thing where I'm like a subtle sin police is what my friends call it. It's like I can just talk to a person, they'll be sharing something and I'm like, yeah, but are you sure like your heart is not like this? I mean, it's probably annoying if I just met them, but I'm usually like that with people who like really trust me, and also with people with the girls that I disciple. I really don't hesitate to kind of, make them be accountable basically with those things. And basically I really just have that as part of my personal vision. So it's like I don't actually see myself mainly as like I'm a singer-songwriter, but then I remember explaining it to a friend. It's like I feel like I'm more of like a little preacher who just packages that message in a sonically pleasing kind of piece of music, so it's like I that's why a lot of my music is very lyrics heavy, and they have a lot of words because I have a lot to say, but I try to say it in a way that's not too overwhelming as maybe a pastor would, but like, hey, here's a lo-fi beat, but get convicted. So I guess that's mainly it's just the bigger part of my heart is really encouraging, and that's even a reminder for myself. So whether or not it's making music per se, or even just creating content where I'm not singing, or making music, it's basically the heart of it is just whatever it takes to kind of encourage whoever is going to consume that content.
I really like the way that you said that. I just think it's so funny because I definitely get that through your music, because I'm a huge lyrics person. I'll be honest. Even That's before cool. I went through a phase where I wasn't introduced to Christian music until I was probably in high school, so like 16. And then, but even before then, I would listen to lyrics and I'd think about it, be like, wait a minute, why are we singing this song? You know what I mean? And when I listen to your music, I definitely, like I said before, I feel like I get to know you. It's not just, it's not that I have anything against music that's more repetitive, but it's not just like, okay, here's a hook, here's the same hook, here's a beat. It's like there's a beat, and it's like, it's rich is what I'm trying to say. And I appreciate it. So
Right.
I just think it's funny that you were like, here's a song, but boom, conviction. So I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah,
I
it's
know you're a
necessary.
huge Tori Kelly fan, right? So like,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
call me out.
I get that. I mean, I love Tori. I love her songs. Like, Funny is a good one. It's like, it sounds
Yes.
great, but then it's so rich, and I am so inspired by her stuff too. So it's like, you can't compromise a good, a rich kind of message for the sake of just getting a hit out there.
Yeah, seriously. And honestly, that is why that's a huge reason why I appreciate Tori and why I appreciate artists like you actually take into account, okay, how can I still make something beautiful and something that has depth? So,
right.
So about 6 months ago, you announced that you are now producing making music full time. So congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
That's huge. That's huge. Can you share a bit about kind of how you were brought to make that decision and kind of what allowed you to make that decision?
Yeah. Really good question. Always good to kind of go back to that. It really is still surreal to be at this point where it's 2021 is ending. And I remember just back in 2020, where I was just telling God, like, wow, God, you've somehow multiplied the reach of my songs this year alone. Is when I started, was last year. And I was thinking, man, what would the end of 2021 look like? And here I am, like, oh, that's got a lot of things. It was really interesting. I remember last year, I was working as a preschool teacher for since I graduated, which was about, I graduated, well, I started teaching 2019. So that's been fun. And honestly, it was really just a blessing as well. I knew that was my calling, even though it wasn't particularly what I studied for. But I did appreciate, because I wasn't like in a corporate job or anything, that I would go home like earlier than the rest of my family. Since I just go home like after preschool's done, and like their classes are only in the morning, so like in the afternoon I don't really get to, I only do like admin stuff and then go straight home. And what that enabled was a lot of time to create music. And basically during that period was when I learned to produce. So I really started around 2018, kind of playing around. I've always wanted to produce stuff ever since I found out that like artists like Jonathan Ogden and like Montel Fish did their own stuff. And I was like, I want to learn that too. So I took that time to learn to produce the songs that I wrote. And basically when the pandemic hit, and like we had to work from home, so even virtual classes happened. And there was also like a big chunk of time where they had to pause our work as well, and like even school for a time, because they had to, everybody didn't know what to do when lockdown started, last year. So as the higher ups were figuring out what to do, they said, okay, teachers can just stay for like a month. You can go on a leave. And then we're like, all right. And that's all I did. I just kept making music. I just kept on. And I started releasing stuff. But yeah, so that was about maybe April of last year, but things really started to pick up, especially around June, I think, was when No Good Thing happened. And when Stephen Bradley, who owns Amen Worldwide, really kind of hung on to like my music and was really like fighting for it. Especially since he knew about my music because of Praise, who is a playlist curator in Amen Worldwide. So and I sing with her on No Good Thing. So it's like just all these little connections really made all the difference, and started getting a lot of streams basically. And I mean, how that economy works is basically I earn from my streams basically. And yeah, I was still teaching, but I do remember a season where I was like, Lord, if you called me to do this full time, I really wouldn't mind. But then I don't want to rush either, because I mean, that thought just came into my mind, so I'm not rushing it. But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And then
Just
I
saying,
mentioned
God.
it. Yeah, I'm just saying. And I remember having a conversation with my spiritual leader, and she was telling me, "All right, then I understand that," and like she was telling me, I mean, the gift is there for sure. So it's like, that's no question. But you're probably going to want to have like your parents' blessing, since I still live with my parents. You're going to want to make sure that financially you have like, just, you know, enough to maybe at least replace your current salary from like your job. So just these little practical things as well to consider. And she also said like a big one was a mentor. So she said, you know, it would be good for you to have a mentor for specifically what you're doing, just so you don't get completely lost of what you're doing. And she couldn't be my mentor, of course, because she wasn't in the music industry or anything like that. So I was like, okay, that's fair. And basically what happened the last part of last year was my streams kept going up. So I saw that there was a pretty good trend going towards meeting what my salary was. And it wasn't that big, actually. So it wasn't that hard as well to kind of meet. Well, by God's grace, like I don't really need a whole lot of that right now, because my parents are still kind of providing for me. But that was easily kind of, you know, that target was kind of easily being met towards the end of last year. And I also saw that as that was happening, I was able to kind of explain that to my parents, especially my dad, who was very kind of business minded. They don't really understand the mission of being like I consider myself like a Christian, like music missionary in a sense, but they don't kind of really fully understand that. So I have to show them like the practical side of things. Well, my mom does, but my dad doesn't. So like I have to show him like the numbers and stuff, like you see this. And by God's grace, by the end of last year, he was kind of saying like, oh, that's interesting, like I actually earned this much from the past month. And he was like, huh, that's interesting. And I had to explain to him like, well, pandemic here is like work from home is kind of a thing lately anyway. So right now I'm in a season where I'm the most creative. I guess this is the peak of my creative season, like in my life. So I was thinking like, I might as well use this season, and I'm not throwing away. Like I have this aspiration to still be like a clinical psychologist one day, which is what I kind of really studied for. So I said that's not really like, it's just in the back burner right now, but I still just want to make use of the energy that I have right now to create. And he was like, all right, that makes sense. So I got my parents' blessing to kind of go for it. And this was also just out of nowhere. Like I remember being on a call with a friend, and I got this email I saw on my phone, and I saw that it was from Stephen Bradley. And he emails me, and he was like, this is a little bit out of nowhere, but God has been putting in my heart to like gather some artists to mentor personally. And I really believe in your music. I was just wondering if you'd be up for like monthly mentorships with me. Everything's for free. I just really want to kind of pour into people, as God has been calling me to do that. And I was really mind blown. I was like, I didn't even look for this. It was exactly what I was looking for. Like exactly what I was looking for, with like somebody that I trusted in the indie community, you know? So that was surreal. I was like, okay, Lord, like a lot of checks here. So it seems like you're kind of calling me to this, and like the only thing left was for me to actually take a step, you know? So that was when I started kind of mentioning it to my boss, who actually understood what my heart really was for, since I knew that God put me in that workplace as well to disciple her. So that was really a blessing of a relationship that I had. And basically when she gave me a heads up and we just started looking for someone to replace me, that was kind of how it happened. I just ended up, now I have nothing to do. I mean, it's like, I woke up one day and I was like, now I get to do what I wanted to do. And it was really quite
Yeah.
an adjustment at first. You don't really know what to do when you're when you're full-time self-employed, I guess. So
Yeah.
that was the next season to kind of figure out. But it was really just a testimony of God's faithfulness. He just sent like over all the right people, and it's, I mean, there are like practical things to look at, blessings from the people who are important to you, and like, of course, wisdom, to guide you, and of course, financially, you're gonna want to find a way to earn, and whether or not it's from some kind of income stream, or could be just raising support from people if you're like a missionary type of
Right.
worker.
Yeah.
So I mean, I also considered that, and that's why I put up my Patreon, in case there were other people who were just willing to kind of support in that way, kind of like how a missionary gets supported. So yeah,
Right.
that's how I got, full time. Nothing. I mean, it's all very, it all makes sense
Yeah.
in a way, but also
Yeah.
in another way, it's just mind blowing to see how God provides.
Yeah, seriously. Like, just even from you sharing that, you know, being advised to kind of seek out mentorship and
Yeah.
not even necessarily totally processing it yet, and then just God being like, boom, here's
I
exactly
know.
what you need. Like, if
Exactly.
that's not confirmation, I don't know what is. But
Exactly.
yeah, that's God's just cool like that. I don't know. He just does stuff and you're like, what? So definitely one of those moments.
Totally.
Yeah. So what, I guess since you've been full-time for a little bit now, what does it kind of look like for you on a daily basis?
Yeah, cool. That is a question that I would not be able to answer even just a month ago. If you asked me that question, I was like, next question. That's just that's really interesting because, like I said, it's hard to have like a routine when I just don't really exactly know what, it's not like I run a business with a whole team or anything for us to have like, all these systems in place just yet. But it basically, on a general kind of scale, I do work on a lot of projects, unlike before in my old job where there is a routine for things, for stuff that I have to do and send in. My boss right now is God, basically. So it's like I have to make a lot of decisions and just kind of consult him and pray about it a lot. And a lot of collaborations and invites for collaborations do come in. So I do work on those a lot. So just like with this thing with Water Walk Records that I got to do this song with, it's really just me kind of deciding today, am I going to do that project already? Or some other days would be just me seeking out God. So that was how, I mean, it was a good season for maybe the past kind of half a year, really just having this freedom as well to really seek God all day if I needed to, if there was something that he wanted me to learn. And I'm pretty quick to apply them anyway. So it's like if there comes a time where in this work I have to apply it, then I will. But more recently, I've kind of decided to put a bit more routine into my life. So it's been really just waking up and looking at my calendar, seeing on certain days I work on more admin kind of back end stuff. I also manage my own finances. I some days I do creating for myself or for somebody else who I have a collaboration with. On some days I decide to focus on social media content. So I plan those stuff and plan how I record them, write stuff. So, I have a newsletter that I give out every month, and like just all these kind of a lot of content planning as well. It took me a while to kind of accept that I am a content creator and that's kind of a backbone to the whole kind of business, if you could call it that. I call it that. It's a lot of that. I feel like I'm operating as as a little business, basically, is how I see it more, rather than as an artist. I'm kind of a hustler in that sense. I do enjoy all the business side of things, the marketing, and all the figuring out how all of that works. So yeah, kind of a nerd in that way. So I spend a lot of time doing a lot of those and studying and like watching all these videos, you know. And yeah, it's a mix of things, but basically whatever it takes to get the next project done and just move on to the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah, I mean, definitely like how you described it, being like a little business. I mean, it's true. Every like artist out there who is independent, you know, and it's like you're doing your thing. And so I think it's cool that, you know, you just continue to learn and continue to seek out different ways of doing things. I appreciate it, you know, because I think it can definitely be easy to fall into just kind of the mundane, like whatever comes my way. You know, it's harder to live on purpose.
Mindset.
Yeah, it's good to have everything planned out and to be diligent. It takes a lot of diligence, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, as you know, SheHH is all about empowering and supporting women in Christian music all over the world. And a lot of people don't realize this. I definitely didn't realize it until I got involved with SheHH. Music industry is a predominantly male industry. I mean, it's just how it is. Especially producers. There are not a lot of female producers. So what does it mean to you to be a woman in music, and more specifically to be like a female producer?
Yeah, I guess I don't realize that as much, maybe because I am so self-centered. But it's just I enjoy it personally, and I guess that's true. I don't see a whole lot of. I mean, I guess not as much as maybe maybe male producers out there, and well, they're usually known for like being more of the beat makers out there, you know, the YouTube beat makers, the Instagram beat makers who just make these beats and like, you know, whatever they do. But it's meaningful to me to see how a lot of other creatives out there are actually inspired, that they actually reach out to me and say that, hey, I'm so inspired to see a female producer and a Christian female producer at that. And I love that. I guess God designed me to kind of have this just nerdy eagerness for a lot of little nerdy things, and just this shamelessness to kind of just go at it, you know. And so I've always been very adventurous in that way. But it's blessing me to see that there are a lot of people like me. Like, it's not like this hobby is not really like something that males just are more inclined to, I guess. I mean, I think it's similar, you know. I really do think that there are women out there. They just, when you realize that it doesn't really take all that much, if you have, you know, the capacity, the money to get all the gear that you need, there are a lot of affordable options these days that it really isn't that far from reality for you to do. And I guess a lot of women might not be exposed to that. I mean, because personally, I also had to do my own research on what it takes to do this. But if you see a model like you know, who is just like you, a young female like you, doing it, then that's all it takes. So for me, I guess I didn't really realize, even just now that you mention it, I guess I don't often think about how it really does spark this creativity from other people, especially other Christian creatives, to emulate what I do and do their own thing. Because everybody has art in them they want to express. So I guess I also just want to use that responsibly. And I'm not really seeking to like, female domination or something. Like, I'm not really parading that. I don't see the need to. But if putting myself out there to show other people that this is possible and I look like you and this is possible, that would like give way to more empowering and inspiring and meaningful art to be created, music to be created particularly, then I would want to keep that going. And I guess that's also the heart behind like this little community that I've somehow created, because in the past year, me and my friend Nina Sengson, who does guitars for me in my more recent tracks, we organize these little listening parties on Zoom where basically we also give that kind of chance for other Christian creatives to share their demos, share their music. And like as a little community, we're really just kind of encouraging each other, like, that's lit, that's fire. Like everybody, it's just the most encouraging little like 3 hours or so just listening to each other's music, all music for God. And these are people who don't have a platform, don't have like thousands of followers to kind of just put it out there and hope someone hears. But in these little communities, we could be like 20 in a room, but all of us genuinely enjoy it at the same time and encourage that creator, at that time, like, this is dope. Like, I need this. Like, you have to release this. And, it's me being able to see that little impact, even in a 20 people Zoom room, of what I could do and how I could encourage them to also share what they do, even if it's not, label material or something like that. That means a lot to me. That means the world to me. And even in this project that I did with this record label recently, I mean, we have a lineup of artists, and like most of them have their music produced by, well, there's this one other beat maker on there, but like for the most of them, they're produced by the producer that we're working with. And like he let me be with like my own song. So I completely produced that and just tapped up a bunch of other people from the Christian indie community to like play their instruments. And it was surreal. Like, I honestly was shocked when he said, okay, we could go for this song. And I was expecting like, okay, I'm excited to see what we could do moving forward with this, how we can stretch out this idea. And he was like, is it done yet? I was like, not yet. And he was like, okay, just give it to me once it's done. And I'm like, really? Okay. Like, even for me, I wasn't prepared for that, but that was really empowering for me. I mean, it's the label thing seems like a big deal, just the record label, and it's the whole idea, but just the fact that they saw that what I made was worthy to be released, and somehow they see that, oh, we can trust an artist like this with that creativity and that drive to do stuff. I mean, I honor their trust as well. I mean, I'm blessed to have good people to work with that they could trust me enough to create something. So, it's really amazing. I do value that, and thank you for mentioning that, because I don't remember it as often, but I guess that doesn't really hinder God from working in that way through me. So
yeah, not at all. No, it's definitely something I don't think about either. And then I'm sitting there trying to curate the playlist, and I go, oh my goodness, because I try to, we try to make it a good mix of genres, right? And I go to, like, there aren't a lot of female like reggaeton artists, like, and so, but I want this in there, and I'm like, hello, like looking through all these artists and playlists, like, can we get somebody out there? And so I'm definitely reminded every week that it's just such a blessing to have female Christian artists in every genre who are dedicated to just honoring the Lord. And I just think it's not necessarily, that it's like, oh, women take over the world, but I think that's definitely, the world can be like, women dominate because men can't. It's more like, where are the women? Because we know that women can do this too, and they do it well. And so it's cool. Yeah. Like you're saying, God even though maybe we're not aware of it all the time, God definitely uses you in the female Christian community. And so I know we're definitely grateful for you and your heart for the Lord and just your artistry. Speaking of, your latest EP, Unapologetic, is a set of 4 demos. Yes. And you said that you deliberately wanted to leave them you said in their imperfect state as a reminder that there's no such thing as wasted art. Can you kind of explain a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Okay, cool. So, my favorite one off the EP is easily Apologetic, because that really just, my style, it captures that, like my style and like my sound. And what I love about Apologetic is I made it back it's one of the first, if not the first, decent Christian song that I wrote and produced. It was the first one, and it was back in 2018, I think. And I had another hard drive then, and then it just crashed out of nowhere, and I had to download this from my SoundCloud, whatever it was right now that is on Spotify. So it's I always thought, this is so good. I spent so many hours on it, but then I don't have the original project to it. And I've always wanted to release it, but then I was like, but I can't release it because I don't have the original one. And I didn't know how to master stuff back then. But God is like, so what? It's still a good song. Go ahead and release it. Right. What's stopping you? And there are just a lot of that. And before I released this EP or even thought of it, I was just kind of taking an inventory of my old projects, my drafts, and I have a lot of demos in my hard drive that are even complete songs that I just haven't released yet, because I feel like I have to master them, and I have to have I don't know, I feel like there's something, you're this creative, you're like, it needs to be perfect, and it says it never is, it never is. And maybe there was an illusion for me that because I just keep on growing as time goes by, and more people listen, and I feel like my music should be better and better, that because these projects were from before the more recent ones, I feel like I shouldn't release them afterwards because they would be less than. And that was keeping me, that illusion of perfection that I needed to kind of put out there was I felt it kind of constricting me a lot. Plus the fact that I've gone full time, even just the idea of that, I found myself feeling that I can't put out anything that is bad because I do this full time, and it should sound like I do it full time. It's that's kind of the little thoughts that were in my head that I didn't. I wasn't even acknowledging for a long time, for a long period. But God told me, and He was also blessing me in a way where I would be in a Zoom call with a couple friends, and I was like, check this demo out that I had from months ago, and they were like, why isn't it out yet? And I'm like, it's not pristine. And they're like, what pristine are you talking about? We enjoy it. I need to hear this. And little stuff like that. I realize, and it happens all the time, even with my listening parties with these people. They share their demos, and we were like, why aren't you releasing it? And I'm it's not perfect. It's just my little idea, And I'm like, no, this can't happen. And I'm there's so much art that is not being shared because they think it has to be perfect, when on its own, what they have so far is already great. And it's not, there are only a little percentage in the world of people who are actual audio engineers who care about all the mixing and everything. But for, the general public, which would be 98% of the population in the world, they listen to something on Spotify and they just want to feel something, So, and for so much of these people that I've met, and for the people who've heard my stuff, they feel something. I feel something. And I just thought, I can't tell people to release stuff and have a bunch of music that are actually good that God gave me and like not release them. So I wanted to kind of just start that and say, okay, fine, let me put this out. And on the same day that I had that idea, and then God convicted me of that, I was looking for these tracks, and I decided, okay, Lord, we can share this. I didn't. One of my weaknesses, honestly, is like album arts. I know you're a graphic artist. It's just one of the things that I just hate so much. I'm like, I'm ready to release it, but I don't have an art, and I don't have budget. I had to come up with something, and that's why I'm like, Lord, I don't care. I'm gonna take a picture of my stuffed toy, and it's gonna be it.
I'm about to ask you. I was like, can you tell me about the album art?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So apart from it being the budget choice, I mean, it's also like that particular toy is really meaningful to me too, because it's the one toy that my mom refuses to throw out, just because it was my first toy ever. So it's like it's more personal for me. It doesn't really mean anything to anyone else, but for me, yeah, I mean, that doesn't matter. But like, it's like a reminder to myself of like of my youth, and how, you know, when you're young, you just don't care really, whether or not something is perfect. Right. So you just, you make something, you're so proud of it. You just want to share with everyone, and you don't care whether or not, I mean, your drawing could be the worst in many ways, but because you're a child and you created it, you have that joy. And I know that whenever we do that, especially when we were kids, like God actually genuinely enjoys not just our art, but our enjoyment of it, of our joy of having created that, because that's not, I mean, I don't know if it encourages God, if God is encouraged, if you could encourage y'all, but like, I'm sure it fills him with joy. He has this delight to see that his creation, his son, his daughter, is delighting in the fact that they are an image of their creator, and that, you know, God knows what it's like. He's had that taste of delighting in the process of creating and beholding his creation, and the fact that we also get to experience that every once in a while in our life, that probably is amazing for God. Like, that's what I mean when I said it is good, you know? So I guess more than anything, it was like a signature of that childlike wonder that I also had when I was creating these songs. And right now, for some reason, I feel like I'm too hoity-toity to even think that it's bad or anything. It really isn't. I do genuinely still enjoy them, and I'm surprised. I mean, again, God wins, you know, God 999, Darla 0. Was like him making that point that people have been blessed by it still, and they reach out to me. I love that there were people out there who were even saying that listening to Apologetic and Unapologetic made them share the gospel to somebody that they've always wanted to share the gospel to. And like, that's what I mean. It's like, aha, you're convicted. And I'm just making a beat, but then they hear that song and they're convicted by the message, and moves, like, you know, pushes them to do something by faith. That's exactly, when I saw those testimonies, like, that's exactly what I want in my life. Like, that's the purpose that I really am called to do. I really believe, because it also fills me with joy to see that people are not just listening to music just to feel good, you know, but it actually makes them decide on things and to walk by faith. And that's just amazing to me. So that's what Unapologetic is about.
Yeah, man, that's just so cool. I'm a big fan of people, you know, putting their art out there that is not perfect, because I struggle with perfectionism. So, you know, it's just one of those things. I think it's just, I don't know, just a human thing. I think just grasping at God's perfection, you know, and then having to be reminded, like, hey, I'm perfect. You don't have to be. And you're like, but God, you know. And it's just so sweet that he was able to, you know, he gave you that reminder of, through your friends, of, hey, you know what? This is still beautiful art and it's powerful as you're seeing, it can touch lives, and that's what it's supposed to do. It doesn't have to get the most streams or sound
Top
the
charts.
cleanest. Yeah. I mean, that'd be nice, God, but but it's about touching souls, and that's what it's doing. So so what do you think are some practical ways that we as Christian creatives can protect ourselves from falling into perfectionism?
Yeah, good question. So first and foremost, it really comes down to a really intimate relationship with God, because you have to have a real personal sense of where your worth comes from. And I mean, the reason why people fall into perfection is because they think that their worth is something that they have to strive for, right? So if you can get that out of the way by addressing that first, by, really soaking into the truth and really living that truth, that your worth isn't related to any performance that you could ever do in your life, but it is anchored on not even within yourself, but it's without. It's from God. Then you will slowly be able to really, I mean, even the work of like releasing you from that bondage is God's work. It's not even ours. So if I could really just even give like one answer to that, it's that personal, very intimate relationship with God. And it has to be crystal clear to you. You have to preach that to yourself every single time, especially every single time that you create, and not just when you create, but even when you share what you create, you're gonna want to remind yourself of where your worth is, and it's gonna be something you're gonna have to really think about every day for the rest of your life, really, because we will really always forget it. But other more practical ways, I guess, would be, of course, surrounding yourself with the right people, especially those who also understand your heart. But if God puts your way, maybe another creative who doesn't know Christ, or hasn't really learned yet, or hasn't matured enough to really anchor their themselves to their worth, to God, then we should also have that awareness that, okay, this is a chance. Because a lot of times we would think, for example, you can work with, like for me, I worked with a seasoned producer with that record label, and it makes me think, okay, this has to be perfect. And that really did happen. Like, this has to be perfect. And that only made me feel fearful. And I couldn't even, it took me such a long time to finish the song, because that was all I was thinking. Like, it has to be perfect because I'm working with better people. But that isn't right. Like, that will only constrict your creativity, of course. So you have to remind yourself, and you should be willing to practice letting go of that fear of not being perfect, regardless of who you're working with, because at the end of the day, they're just people. They are still beneath God, So you have to remember that, whether or not they've had a lot of experience. And for a lot of times as well, they need to hear that truth as well. Because maybe if you see someone who's perfectionist, or you work with someone who's perfectionist, you think that's a great thing, but then you don't see that they're actually in bondage to that lie, that they have to be perfectionists, and they need someone like you who knows your worth in Christ to remind them that it doesn't matter. You're doing great, but it even if you didn't, you're still worth something, and you could be that person to bless another person. Like for me, just a little side story, like that is kind of what I was dealing with, that perfectionism, that fear of not measuring up. And that's because I knew that I had to make that song, that's what the lyrics was about. So if you can hear the latest song, Search Me, and listen to the lyrics, it's all about fear of man and anxiety and asking God to search my heart. Because that was literally just my state, because I knew I had to write this song. So, and it worked out. Yeah, it really did. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. It can't be me. Can't just be me. So,
no, it's a big struggle for sure. For, I think, anybody, but especially, I think, for Christian creatives, because, we do have that mentality of, well, I'm doing this for God, so I want it to be excellent, and I think that's a very slippery slope into it has to be absolutely perfect, so yeah, I think that's great though. Just going back to the basics of spending time with God, seeking God and knowing God and knowing that He is perfect and remembering that He is perfect. And I remember one time seeing I think it was in a commentary, it was about a specific verse that was talking about how God is perfect. And I just saw it in a different way. I was like, oh my gosh, God takes care of that perfection for me. He takes care of it all. And I don't have to rival Him. I don't have to try and match Him, because I just get to submit to His perfection, which is honestly, it's hard, it's hard, but it's freeing. And so, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would even go as far as to say, for me, if I create for maybe 5 hours, work on something, I need to spend time with God, way more than that, or just have something I can't create something out of nothing, really. I'm not God. He does that, but I can't. I can't create, out of emptiness. And so, before you create, make sure that you're spending time with God first. Make sure that you're submitted to the Holy Spirit and just doing as He leads. And what that doesn't only mean creative input, but even when it's time to stop, because when you're taking way too much time, for me, I have these physiological responses that I know, my neck is I feel this choking feeling, I know I'm forcing it already. And God is telling me stop, or even rest. If you have a good rhythm of rest, I think that's a good reminder to yourself that you're still in submission to God, even as you create. So these are little kind of more, I guess, a little practical reminders as well, little rests and time with God, and reminding yourself to still be submitted as you create. So,
right, definitely. What do you think are some verses that God is kind of using to encourage you with during this time of life?
During this time of my life, one of
I know it's kind of a broad question.
No, that's cool though, because there is one that I kept coming back to for the past 2 weeks. 1 Thessalonians 4, and it's 9-11, but I'll read everything. It says, "Now concerning brotherly love, you have no need for anyone to write you, for you have been personally taught by God to love one another. That is, to have an unselfish concern for others and to do things for their benefit. For indeed, you already do practice it toward all the believers throughout Macedonia by actively displaying your love and concern for them. But we urge you, brothers and sisters, that you excel in this matter more and more, and to make it your ambition to live quietly and peacefully, and to mind your own affairs and work with your hands, just as we directed you." So I have been meditating so much on verse 11, the last one, where it says to make it your ambition to live quietly and peacefully, to mind your own affairs. Another translation, mind your own business and work with your hands. And the next verse would be so that you could be a testimony to other people, to non-believers, and so that you won't depend on anyone for your living and stuff like that. So this is just important for me personally, because, and I think this could be relevant to a lot of creatives as well, when it says, live quietly, that is so interesting, because we live in a noisy kind of world, and we also want a lot of attention, even on social media, especially when you share something, you want to have that attention, and it's hard to live quietly with all that kind of noise in your head, always trying to seek that attention from other people, trying to seek that approval, always kind of, and it says there, mind your own affairs. It's when you're on social media, you always kind of mind other people's affairs and kind of compare yourself against them, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like this is such an important verse, actually, kind of thinking about it. Okay, when you create, don't create because you want to impress people, you want to get all this attention, you want it to be a hit, you just create, just focus on your work, focus on what God is calling you specifically to do. And it could be that He created this piece of art for just another person to bless, but that's still a real soul, that's still an eternal soul that he's trying to reach. And you should be contented with whatever his calling for you is. So I really love this, and it really makes me kind of go against that worldly standard that's being thrown at me, that I have to God blessed me recently to be on the cover of New Music Friday Christian. Like right now, as we speak, I'm the cover of that, and like I didn't ask for that. And I remember like specifically when that happened, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, Lord, we need to talk because I could easily like just get all the attention on this, or I could still tell you that I am in submission to you, and even if it dies down after this, which I'm sure it will, and I still have my worth in you, So these are little things, and Paul knows that from like years ago, and that's just a human tendency to like want all that noise and that illusion of greatness, but we don't need that, and God doesn't put that pressure on us, but he just wants us to live quietly, be diligent and faithful with whatever he's calling us to do. And we don't even have to strive to look for that, because he's prepared that already for us beforehand. So that's the little verse encouragement that's been on my mind.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I do think it's applicable all the time, but I think especially just right now with so much going on in the world, and with just social media, just explosion that's out there, and it's all look at me. I mean, I definitely can fall into that, of, okay, did people see this yet? And so it's definitely a good reminder to be like, all right, what's the deal? Why are we really doing this? And God being like, hey, mind your own business, focus on your own self, focus on what I'm calling you to do, and it's a good reminder. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
What can we be looking forward to hearing from you soon?
Cool. So I haven't thought that far. So I've been focused so much on this recent release. But I do have a few things like if you just follow me on my social media, that's basically where all the announcements are. At Darla Baltazar, or you can also follow me on my newsletter, darlabaltazar.com/newsletter, so you can sign up for like a summary of the updates basically every month. But aside from just this song coming out recently, on December 18th, this is like a side project that I have with SheHH Creates. It's like this other thing that my friend and I made. But basically we have an event on December 18th where we're premiering the music video. It has been long overdue, but I asked people, and there were a bunch of fans who sent in their videos and their voices as well. And we created this special version of Whom Have I, which is a song that I released earlier this year. And it's an extended version with like a bunch of people's voices singing the song. And also a music video made by a friend named Grant Smith. He did an amazing job. I just saw the latest version last night, and I was just, it's nothing like visually aesthetic, but it's definitely so meaningful to me to see a song like this, and like with people from all over the world singing that song. Whom have I in heaven but you? There's nothing on earth I desire besides you. And it's just the most amazing thing. And we're premiering that in a Zoom event on December 18th. But that Zoom event is also a culminating kind of event where I invited creatives to make any sort of art based on Psalm 73. And during that event, we're going to be sharing that to each other. Like, what do you have so far? What were you able to create? We're just going to enjoy that. So that's what's coming up in a shorter span of time. But definitely in the next coming year, there are lots of 2 albums, I would say, 2 albums that are actually just waiting to be released. So because of my poor time management, I could never have them done. But we're really kind of pushing to have those finished and just ready to release them. So music and little events and more content as well. I'm really excited to show more about the production behind stuff and just sharing people ideas of how they can kind of just get ideas from how I create and create their own stuff. So yeah, just those general things.
Nice. That's so exciting, though. You say, "Oh, just those little things," but they're really cool. I really appreciate just your heart and honestly the ministry that God has given you. And so I'm excited, and I know everybody who's going to listen to this is going to be excited too. Just the SheHH family. So,
Thank you.
with everything that's going on, this is kind of a classic SheHH question. It seems like this is kind of just the beginning for you, and we're super excited to see where God takes you on this journey. But I want to know, what do you want your legacy to be?
That is great. Legacy is it's a really nice question. It's interesting because actually recently I have been really telling God I don't mind not having a legacy because I don't want to strive to make a legacy, if that makes sense. Because how there are the greatest people in history, especially the ones who have really contributed so much to the mission, to the Great Commission. They have never lived to see the fruit of their work.
Right.
And I told God that I don't mind not being able to see that, but if somehow people would really just be able to take these songs and be encouraged to see, and just with how I create as well, and just be encouraged enough to have that courage to create in their own particular way, no matter how unique they are. It doesn't matter. It could be an output like music or a graphic, like a poster or something like that, or a piece of art. It could be a business, it could be a whole thing. It doesn't really matter. But if God really calls you to do something, and no matter how ridiculous it seems to the world, I just want that somehow with how I go about things. And maybe people don't know me. Maybe they just heard my music and they were like, oh, I want to make something like that. They don't know the artist, but they heard that. Like if it could just move people to create as well, just anything that I just don't want it to be. I just don't want the consumer of my stuff to be the end of the line, but I want that to kind of move forward, like making disciples in that special way, creatively, specifically. I guess that's the thing that I would want more than anything. So anything that really just continues that, whatever continues Jesus's legacy, I guess, if you could say it like that. I mean, I'm just a continuation of that in my own way, and whatever it takes for me to kind of encourage other people to do the same. That's it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very well said. Just getting to kind of be used as a vessel in kind of the legacy of the kingdom of God. So
yeah,
I think it's cool. We're all about it.
That's the only thing that lasts, right?
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to wake up early and to meet and chat and just share your heart. And I've had a good time actually getting to chat almost in person, just almost, maybe one day. But it's been great. And so, everyone can find your music on all the platforms, yes?
Yes. Yeah. Darla Baltazar.
Yes, and at Darla Baltazar, and can keep up with you on social media. And so, yes, SheHH family, be sure to check out Darla and keep up with all that God is doing and see how you can be a part of her ministry as well. So thank you so much. And
thank you, Hannah.
This has been a blast.
I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, make sure to leave a like rating wherever you're listening to this and to follow us on Instagram at SheHH Podcast.